When we're solving percents, the first thing to remember is a lot of them, maybe not all of them, definitely not all of them, but many of them you might be able to do in your head. So do this one in your head right now. What's 50% of 400? 50% is half. So it's 200. Yeah. So what is 25% of 400? If we knew that 50% was 200, then 25% is going to be half of that, 100. Or we know 25% is 1/4. So we say, okay, what goes into 400 four times? Amazing. And 10% is another easy one to do in your head. 10%, remember, is 1/10. So you're looking for what goes into this 10 times. Since we have a base 10 decimal system, you can basically just move the decimal point. 1/10 of 400 is 40. 1/10 of 250 is 25. 10% is a nice, easy one to do in your head. They won't all be so easy. When you have one that is not so easy, we always want to remember that a percent is just part divided by whole. Okay, part divided by whole. And when you do that, you'll get a decimal. Looks like this. And when we're turning that into a percent, we usually multiply it by 100%, right? So 0.20 is 20%. We can also always write a fraction as, a percent as a fraction. It's always out of 100. So we just do our amount. Like if it's 20%, that's 20 out of 100. And if you have it out of 100, you could also write it as a decimal because we know how to convert between fractions and decimals, right? I mean, we should, especially if it's out of 100, because that just means we are using our tenths and hundredths place. All right, let's keep going. So, when it's not as easy, what is 30% of 400? I will say one hot tip right here is if you know what 10% of 400 is, which you do, it's 40. Then 30% you can multiply by 3 and get there. Right? This was times 3, and so this was times 3. You could have also, if you knew what 25% of 400 was, we did, it was 100. We could find out what 5% is, and then 5% plus 25% would get us to 30%. But let's pretend for a moment that we don't know 10 or 5% of 400, and we just want to find out what it is. Part divided by whole equals my percent, right? So in this problem, the part is what I don't know. Something divided by 400 gives me 30%. So if I want to know what this thing is, I have to get rid of divide by 400. I'm going to multiply by 400 on both sides so that these guys cancel. And I'm going to end up with 120. If you multiply this and you get 120, you get 12,000. Don't forget that 30% is 30 over 100, or it's 0.30. Either way you want to do it. So make sure you get that decimal. 30% of 400 has to be less than 400, right? So if you get your answer something bigger than 400, that's your clue that something went wrong. All right, different type of percent problem. Russell Westbrook made 432 field goals out of 991 attempts. What was his percentage? So remembering that we are always part divided by whole equals our percent. Our part here is 432. That's how many he made out of the whole number he tried to do was 991. So if we want to get the percent, we're just going to divide those two numbers. And when we do that, what do we get? We get this lovely long fraction, decimal, 0.4359233, blah. It just keeps going. You don't have to write that all out. Let's usually do tenths or hundredths. Let's do hundredths here. Why not? So this is going to be 0.435. What's after is a 2, so we're rounding down to 9. That's my decimal. To make this a percent, we're going to times it by 100%, 43.59%. Really a very good field goal percentage for the NBA. I guess that Russell Westbrook, relatively good at basketball. All right, 45 is what percent of 200? So again, thinking, sorry, you're going to hear me say it so many times, part divided by whole. The thing we don't know this time is the percent again. So 45 is my part, 200 is my whole. When I divide those guys, I get a lovely fraction, 0.225, to make that a percent. Did I just say fraction when I meant decimal? Yes, again, I did. Sorry. 22.5%. 45 is 22.5% of 200. 57 is 15% of some number. What's the number? All right, just like parsing the word problem part here. 57 is 15% of times some number. How nice. We could solve that way. The other way we could do it, as always, part divided by whole is the percent. And here I have 57. That's my part. I don't know what it's 15% of, but something. So when I have 57 divided by something, I get 15%. Trying to get that x all by itself, this one is actually a nicer way to do it. Let's divide by 15% on both sides. So if I do 57, divided by 15%, you could do this as 0.15, or you could do it as 15 over 100 in your calculator. So we have 57 divided by 0.15%, and we get 380. Does it make sense that 57 is 15% of 380? I mean, yes, the number should be way bigger than 57, right? Because 57 is only 15% of it. We need a bunch of 57s to fit into it. What is 42% of 250? You're never going to believe it. I'm going to do part divided by whole equals percent. So we know that it's 42%. And we have that the whole thing is 250. What we don't know is the part. So let's get rid of this divide by 250 by multiplying it. That reminds us that we could always write this as the part equals the whole times the percent. That's what we've been doing each time. So just as a sidebar, if that makes your life easier, you can write down that formula, and it will be on the last slide. Anyway, I know that half of 250 is 125, so it should be like a little less than 125. And lo and behold, when I multiply these guys, I get 105. Excellent. That seems good. What is 110% of 40? Since this percent is more than 100%, the number had better be bigger than 40. But again, we're going to use that part equals whole times the percent. So I've got 40 was my original, like my whole, and I'm going to times it by 110%. Don't forget, 110% is 110 over 100, which is 1.1. All the other percents we've dealt with so far have been less than 1, but that one's bigger, and it's because we're doing 110%. That's more than the whole thing. 44. Does that sound right? We have 10% more. Yeah, looks good. What is 15% of 37? So something divided by 37 gives us 15%. I'm going to go 37 times 15%, right? I'm multiplying by 37 on both sides to cancel them out over there. And gosh, what is it? It's a weird number, 5.55. Does that make sense that 15% of 37 would be like small, like 5? It does. We need 15, 30, 45, 60, 75, 90. We need a bunch of them to fit in there. So, yeah, seems good. 15 is 10% of what number? 15 is 10% of what number? Let's get rid of this times 10% by dividing by 10%. Oh, wait, there's an even easier way to solve this, but it's okay. We'll solve it this way first. 15 divided by 10% leaves me 150. But listen, if I knew that 10% of x is 15, then I can multiply this up really easy. 10% of x is 15 times 5. 100% of x is 15 times 10. I could do 20, 40, 60, whatever. I could do so many multiples of 10 once I know that 10%. Because 10 is a nice one. It goes into 100 evenly. 25% is also a nice one because it goes into 100 evenly. Also 5% is a great one. Anyway, 7 is 20% of something. So my whole number has to be bigger than 7 for sure. And actually, do you know how many times 20 goes into 100? If you do, this is going to be super helpful because we can do it without any of the dividing. It goes in 5 times. So you can go times 5 over here. 35. Bam, we're done. Or you do 7 divided by 20%. And when you do 7 divided by 0.20, you get 35, just like we just did. Fantastic. 100 is 40% of some number. What's that number? Okay, I'm going to do one more trick. You know how we could go up from, 20 to 100? We can also go down. If 40% was 100, then 20% has to be half of that, 50. And then, blammo, I can multiply 20 by 5 to get up to my 100%. And then I do that over here, times 5, and I should get 250. But coming back here, let's just double check that. 100 divided by 40%. So 100 divided by 40%. Oh my God, it's 250. I mean, I knew it, but 2 ways. Okay, awesome. So this right here is your cheat sheet. Save it. Screenshot it right now, whatever you want to do. Because there's essentially 3 types of percent problems. One where they give you the whole and they give you the percent, and you have to find the part, right? What is 15% of 80? There's ones where they give you the part and the whole, and you need to get the percent. So you divide your part divided by your whole, and that gives you your percent. And then there are the sort of backwards ones. I mean, it's not really backwards, but you have the percent of some number. So you have the part and the percent, but you don't know the whole. So you can set up this lovely thing. I like to do this. Part divided by whole is percent out of 100%, right? Or you can use like we've been doing just then before when I was reading those problems just straight through. I'm like 48 is equals 20% of times some number. And you can solve it that way too. Or look at this lovely thing. It's part divided by percent. All right, that's the cheat sheet. Try them out.